Judge Windell, you let me know when you've settled in.
I'm good, thank you, Chief Justice.
Are you comfortable?
Yes, I am, thank you.
How are you?
Nervous, but I'm good, thank you.
No need to be. We are pussycats.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that.
I did not know that you are from my neck of the woods. You were born in Lady Frey,
Yes,
so you were my home girl.
good to know.
Yeah. You did a BUris degree at the Northwest University and graduated in 1989. Then obtained an LLB through UNISA a few years later, which I gather you would have done part-time naturally, but whilst working because...
I did that, yes.
And you had started as a prosecutor directly after you graduated from the Northwest
Yes,
and remained there until 1993, then worked your way up to the magistracy. You were a magistrate for 10 years?
20 years.
20?
Yes.
Oh, yes. And then you started acting as a judge in 2011 already?
That's correct, yes. I was invited to participate in the mentorship program. So I attended a course in 2010 and then I was asked to come and act in 2011.
All right. And you did a term, I see, and then was invited back in 2013
That is correct.
for 2 terms now.
Yes,
And you were appointed permanently later that year in July
of 2013.
of 2013. And that's where you are to date.
Yes.
But you've acted at the Supreme Court of Appeal in the interim.
Yes, I've been invited for 3 terms. So I've done 3 terms in the Supreme Court of Appeal.
How have you found that stint?
Coming from Gauteng, it was a bit different, but I think because of the workload in Gauteng, I could manage.
Yeah.
It is different because you're sitting in panels of 5 and there's a different work environment, but I enjoyed it.
Yes. Yeah, you would have coped easily. Speaking for myself, I always marvel when I see a good judgment coming from a judge sitting in Gauteng and wonder when they would have got the time to write.
Yes.
What kind of work have you been exposed to in the High Court?
All fields of law. The only thing that I haven't done is I haven't done patent law, but as far as all other fields of law are concerned, I've done cases and written judgments in most fields of the law.
How many judgments on estimate?
My registrar keeps copies of all my written judgments, so we did the exercise about 409.
That's a huge output.
Yes.
And at the SCA?
In my 3 terms, I got 2 judgments per term to write. So I produced 6 written judgments, 4 of which were reported.
And in what kind of matters did you sit in at the SCA?
I did a tax matter. That is one of the cases that I attached to my application. I've done a matter in admin law, a servitude. There was, I'm not trying to quickly think about the others. There was a, sorry, now I can't remember.
That's all right. All right. Do you have any outstanding judgments?
You will see from my form that when I applied, I had a couple of outstanding judgments.
From the SCA?
No, nothing from the SCA.
High Court?
From the High Court, but they've all been finished. They've all been delivered.
Any part-head matters?
No part-head matters.
Okay. You have been quite active in participating in several projects towards mentoring of law students and aspirant judges, notably in the SAJ, and I know because I
Yes.
observed with my own two eyes how active you've been in the South African chapter of the International Association of Women Judges.
Yes.
What drives you to do that kind of work?
Well, I think it started when I was a
And
magistrate.
where do you find the time to do that?
I think it's a passion, and I started when I was a magistrate, so we did outreach programs. I was involved with the social context program of the Cape Town University, and I wanted to actually share my knowledge. And when I came to the High Court and I got the opportunity to get involved, I immediately did so. So I'm involved with SAJA in training aspirant judges. I'm involved with training aspirant magistrates. I've been invited by Deputy Judge President Mojapelo to participate in the aspirant women judges program last year, and I was invited again this year.
All right. Well, I know for myself that you are a very hardworking person. You are a workaholic. You are notorious for that.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
It's not a compliment. All right. Okay, I'll stop there, Judge Windell, and let DP Zondi, who has worked with you at the SCA, put questions to you.
Thank
if he
you,
has
Chief
any.
Justice.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Judge Windell.
Good afternoon, DP.
I just want to place on record that I did not receive any negative comments from the SA colleagues regarding your suitability. The only thing that some of them mentioned was that they did not consider you to have acquired sufficient experience at the SA because you have been there, you worked there, you've done 3 terms. Is that correct?
Yes, I've done 3 terms.
So yeah, that was the only thing. But insofar as you apply yourself and your diligence is concerned, nobody seems to have doubted it. I assume that having been appointed at the High Court since July 2013, you have had an opportunity to preside in cases on appeal. Is that correct?
Yes, both full bench appeals as well as full court appeals, and I've also been allocated duties in special motions where, as a court of first instance, where we sit as 3 judges.
Okay, thank you. Sitchi, I don't have any further question.
Thank you, DP. JP Mlambo.
Good afternoon, Judge Windell.
Good afternoon, JP.
You mentioned that you've sat in full court first instance matters. Am I correct?
That is correct, yes.
It is normal in the division to have full court appeals. I think I count not less than 36 per term, full court appeals, just in Johannesburg. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And how much of that load have you shouldered?
I looked back until 2021. I quickly counted. I sat in about 23 full court appeals, over which more than half of them I have presided. And when you sit in those full court appeals, it's the duty of the most senior judge to take the first and most complicated matter. So I've taken on that duty as well.
Do you have an idea of how many of those that you've scribed, the full court appeals, that have been reversed?
I'm only aware of one. It's the Imbuku wine matter. I concurred in my sister Sewendu's judgment in that matter. There was also a minority judgment, and the minority judgment has been upheld by the SCA, but that's the only one that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, JP. Commissioner Muimang.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Justice
Commissioner.
Windell. Just one question from my side. As you all know, that you were here on the 20th of May,
Yes,
and the outcome is the reason as to why you are here today.
yes.
So I would be more interested to get a sense as to what unique features are you bringing to the Supreme Court of Appeal that will shift the ground in your favor this time, such that you are able to bring more expertise that the SCA might have lost due to a number of reasons. It could be other retirement, it could be to elevation of judges to other more senior positions.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I've been a presiding officer for 30 years. It's 20 years as a magistrate and 10 years 11 years actually as a judge. So I think my unique path that brought me to this specific moment will definitely contribute, my experience that I've gathered over the years. You would know that as in the magistrates court, that is 90% of all cases. That's the first court that they will encounter. So that taught me a lot over the years. And so when I got to the High Court, I already had that background. And being from Johannesburg and Gauteng, which is the busiest division in the country, I was exposed to a large field of different matters. And I first got the opportunity to also deal with tax matters. So I've written 7 tax cases, and none of them have been overturned so far. I've granted leave in one in April, so I'm awaiting to see what happens there. So I've got extensive knowledge in tax law, and I've also, as far as I know, I'm one of the few judges that have dealt with class action matters. So I think my experience and my unique background prepared me for the SCA, and I would be able to contribute.
Thank you, Justice Wendell. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Marumakhai, do you have any questions for this candidate?
None, CJ, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the end of your interview, Judge Windell. Oh, no, not so lucky. Commissioner Lekanyane has questions for you.
Thank you so much, CJ. Good afternoon, Judge Windell.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
I see you were involved, 2 of the matters that have been mentioned here, where you were involved were with regard to the lead poisoning case.
That's correct, yes.
And the silicosis case.
That is correct.
I would like to get your sense of understanding on the plight of the communities surrounding mining and the extent to which we can drive inclusive socio-economic development. Thank you.
Do I understand your question to be as far as class actions are concerned? Can you just perhaps repeat the question for me?
What is your sense of understanding on the plight?
The plight
of the communities in the mining areas?
Yes,
and the extent to which, as a country, we can drive inclusive socio-economic development?
That's a difficult question. I've not given any thought to that, unfortunately. But if I can venture an answer, I would think that yes, it is necessary to share in the wealth of what mining industries bring to this country. And you would see from the silicosis judgment how people have suffered because of the neglect of mining companies. I would think that legislation and the legislator would play an important part in this aspect. I don't think any of those questions have come before a court yet, but I would think that if it does happen, that it is something that one should have a look at, but I'm sure that is the task of the legislator and not the task solely of the courts. I hope that answers your question.
CJ? Yeah, you have been involved in those two matters, and I think to some extent you should be able to give an appreciation of the plight
Absolutely, yes.
that the communities, and it's something that happens now and then. It may not only be in those two communities that you have to preside over, but you might have heard of other wrangles elsewhere in the country. It could be in the Waterberg, in Tubatse, and elsewhere.
I think that's only the start of the class actions. I think there's going to be many. So I agree with you. I think that the silicosis and the lead poisoning matters, that's the only two matters that I've been involved in, but I'm sure that that is only the start of many litigation that will still come.
Commissioner Pillay?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Judge Windell.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Pillay.
Judge Windell, if I may just follow up on that in relation to your Kabwe judgment.
Yes,
And obviously, you've produced a substantive judgment in the Kabwe matter.
Yes.
It's now an appeal. But the effect of that judgment was that 140,000 Zambian women and children who suffered lead poisoning effectively had couldn't continue to trial.
Yes.
Because of the absence of certification. That fact, the fact that you have large amounts of impoverished people whose fate, in a sense, hangs in the balance when you're making your decision on the class action. How does that weigh into your application of the principles applicable to class actions?
Yes, I think that was a matter that I spent a long time considering. You would see the peculiar facts of that matter. The class members, proposed class members, were all citizens of Zambia. The injury that was committed happened 97 years ago. So there's an application to hold Anglo responsible for the lead poisoning that's still continuing after Anglo has left Zambia, I think somewhere in the 90s, early 90s. So it is specific circumstances of that case, although it is heart-wrenching, did not satisfy the requirements, in my view, of a triable issue. And that is what is so difficult to be a judge, because you're also a human being. But I have to be faithful to my oath that I would administer justice without fear, favor, or prejudice. So although one has empathy, and there's many cases that comes before a judge where you have a lot of empathy, where sometimes a person will testify and it will bring you to tears, but you still have to administer the law. So it was a very difficult decision, and that's also one of the reasons why I granted leave to appeal, because there are a reasonable prospect that another court would come to a different conclusion. But those specific facts, I just couldn't find that there was a triable issue.
Thank you, Judge Windell. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Could I just ask a follow-up? Anyway, I read the judgment. It's thoroughgoing, so it's exceptionally written. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But I wasn't sure if I agree with it.
Yes, of course.
What is the specific fact, actually, that made it not a triable issue? I can understand the later part of the judgment say it's going to be very difficult to run this trial, because even on the assessment of the plaintiff's counsel, it was a 10-year trial, making it extremely difficult. And I understand that maybe they made a strategic choice by making it an opt-in
Yes.
class action.
And not an opt-out.
Yeah, exactly. But when you said it's not a triable issue, I couldn't understand the specific fact that made it not a triable issue.
Well, I think one of the issues is that they had to establish prima facie facts. They had to place prima facie facts before me. And there were, first of all, no witnesses left. So there's not a single witness that will be able to come and testify about the duty of the mining company during that specific period. The second thing is they could find no documents that basically could prove prima facie that Anglo specifically was responsible. So when one looks at the prima facie evidence that was placed before me, in my view, I found that there was no triable issue.
Yes, but I mean, both of those issues, it might be that they will lose at the trial, but that's not the same thing as saying there is no triable issue.
Yes, I think the case law on as far as class actions is concerned is that it's not only, it shouldn't just be an arguable case. There must be some merit in the case. There must be prima facie evidence. So if there's an absence of evidence, first of all, no witnesses, no documentary evidence, in my view, that could link the lead poisoning that's continuing today to something that happened more than 47 years ago. So there was a big gap between when the Anglo left Zambia and left the mine up to where we are now. So in my view, there was not sufficient evidence to even make out a prima facie case, because I know the bar is quite low when it comes to class actions. And that's why I grappled with these issues for a very long time. But in the end, I had to live up to my conscience and say, but there is not sufficient evidence at this stage to even certify the class action.
Yes, no, thank you. I mean, as I say, the judgment itself, in terms of how the judgments go, it's really excellent.
Thank you for that.
But I am looking forward to the appeal.
Yes.
Commissioner Mtsweni-Sipane.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Yes, I just want to commend you, Judge Windell. Your judgments are known for their clarity and thoroughness, which to me is an important attribute for an appellate judge who needs to deliver well-reasoned decisions that may set a legal precedent. Now, as a result of that, have you ever had some issues with delivering judgment timeously? Because the environment in which you are coming to would require of you to work in a much more faster way, so that judgments are delivered quite efficiently and timeously.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, in most instances, I deliver my judgments within 3 months. Unfortunately, with the Kapwe matter, it took me a long time. I think it took me 10 months to come to that decision because of the vast legal issues. The papers were more than 15,000. So that's the one matter that I have to single out, and that's also the reason why I attach it to my application, to show that that is one of the matters that I took some time. But I did advise my JP, and I did advise the parties, and they were all, they could understand why it took me a bit longer. As far as the SCA is concerned, I delivered all my judgments before I left on that last day, I think with the exception of 2. So, and they were all delivered within 3 months period. So I do not have any issue delivering my judgments promptly. Thank you.
Well, it does appear that we have reached the end of your interview.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you very much for making yourself available, Judge Windell, and all the best to you.
Thank you, Chief
You're
Justice.
excused.
Thank you, Commissioners.